One of the Kakin princes is the secret child of Beyond Netero, and we are going to discover who it is. But firstly, let's just take a moment here, because Hunter x Hunter started out as a series about finding a father, and I like that we've come full circle, as our primary quest is now to find a child. But it is of profound importance that we discover who this prince is as quickly as possible. So let's start with first Prince Benjamin, who is, I think, the natural first choice, because he has a lot of those inherent Netero family qualities, with an unrelenting focus on personal strength, an exceptional mastery of Nen, and he's a natural leader, who's currently in charge of his own private Nen army that functions sort of like a miniature hunter association. In terms of aesthetic genetics, Benjamin is difficult, because he looks almost exactly like his mother, First Queen Unma, so there are no visual Netero genes detected. However, at the same time, there's no visible signs of Nasabi either, so Unma's dominant genes could be masking the Netero heritage. The big question we have with Benjamin is whether or not he fits the timeline, because Beyond Netero started his plan 30 years ago, meaning that his child cannot be over 30 years old. And the issue here is that we don't know the exact ages of most of the princes. And I now realize that Togashi has done that on purpose due to this plot point. A lot of fans speculate that Benjamin is in his mid-30s to early 40s due to being the oldest of a whopping 14 siblings. And I think that would be reasonable if every child had the same mother, but the 14 princes were born across 8 different mothers, so I think their ages are a lot closer than we would traditionally think. With all of that said, Benjamin may be the only prince at this stage who we can conclusively dismiss, if only because Longi herself seems to have dismissed the idea of Benjamin. She doesn't think that Beyond is working for Benjamin to inherit the throne, implying that it's anyone but him. And so we turn our attention to second Prince Camilla, who is the daughter of second Queen Dwazel, and whilst not as powerfully as Benjamin and Unma, Camilla certainly does take after her mother. Now here is an interesting thing. Second Queen Dwazel appears to have been, how shall I put this, favored by King Nasabi, because she's actually the mother of 4 princes: Camilla, Tebepa, Luzerus, and Hulkenberg in that order, who are all quite genetically diverse, meaning that we could definitely be hiding an imposter among us here. However, Dwazel was ordered by Camilla to kill Hulkenberg, her mother ordered to kill her brother, which is a very off dynamic. We haven't focused on them a lot, but the Kakin queens, mate, they carry such a high level of respect that is second only to the king. So princes can't just order queens around. So on the one hand, it is very Netero quality for Camilla to be taking charge here, but on the other, Dwazel is very hesitant to help Camilla, and if she was Beyond's child and part of this sinister master plan, then Dwazel would probably be more on board with the idea. Alongside Benjamin, Camilla was one of the 2 princes who came into this contest as an existing Nen user, and I do think there's an argument to be made that Beyond would have initiated his child if it was one of the princes, in which case it would have to be either Benjamin or Camilla, or it's a prince who already knows Nen and was hiding it. And there aren't that many candidates left for the latter, because we've now seen quite a few princes discovering Nen use. However, Beyond may not have necessarily initiated the child, and I don't think that Camilla is the strongest candidate. It is possible, but I do think that other princes are more probable. And one of them who that is not is third Prince Zanglei, someone who we can 99.9% rule out of contention here, because in chapter 390, he had a meeting with Onyo Longbao, boss of the Jiyu family, where Zanglei was asking about Nen and Guardian Spirit Beasts, what's up with them. The first strange thing is that a prince would personally visit a mafia boss. Even though Zanglei funds the Jiyu family, it's still very odd for a prince to pay a personal visit for someone under him. In theory, you would have the boss visit the prince. But when departing, this all makes a little bit more sense, as Zanglei stated to himself, "I'm counting on you, father." Which is pretty straightforward. Previously, we weren't quite sure what to think of this because Kakin society is complicated. They use titles and words in their own unique way. Father may not necessarily mean biological father. It could have been some sort of special mafia terminology because Onyo was the boss. But now that we're focusing on this legal wife loophole, I think that Zanglei is pretty guaranteed to be Onyo's actual child and not the son of Beyond Netero. Which brings us to the ever increasingly horrifying possibility that it is the 4th prince. In my chapter review, I said that Sridnik didn't look like a young Netero, and mate, I got a lot of comments calling me absolutely insane for that. And I understand why. Because the way Togashi draws these 2 characters are quite inconsistent, and when I think of young Netero and Sridnik, I don't think of the ones that look similar. When I think of young Netero, I think of our Dark Continent traveler, bushy eyebrows, colossal ears, and thick with so many C's nose, much of which is present in Beyond, but Sridnik is often portrayed as the exact opposite, with very sleek and refined facial features, much like Nasabi has. But here here's where the thing comes in. Sradnik is usually portrayed as quite sleek, but not always. Occasionally, what Togashi does is he uglifies Sradnik, which often involves making his nose and other facial features far thicker and more prominent than in any other panel. And it's in these sorts of drawings that you can definitely see a Netero resemblance emerging. And there is a bonus drawing of Sradnik in one of the volumes that I do think looks incredibly Netero-esque, and he's talking about separating people into two categories, useful trash and useless trash, which I can't deny is a very Netero way of thinking. Both Isaac Netero and Beyond Netero sought to use people to bring their ideal futures into existence. It's just that with each generation we're getting less and less benevolent. But I do think most people are comparing Sradnik to Netero specifically during his mountain training, because he had a very similar hairstyle to Sradnik at the time, and there is potentially a parallel with that and the intense Zetsu training that Sradnik is currently undertaking, which has resulted in his own personal enlightenment. But also they have a very similar level of drive. Netero spent years in the mountains giving punch offerings, and in the last batch of Hunter x Hunter chapters, it was said that in 7th grade at military school, Sradnik locked himself in his room and kept practicing the same weapon stripping and reassembly drill until he broke the academy speed record, and he did so without eating or sleeping, which is very Netero of him. And then there's the curious question of Sradnik's mother, who is also first Queen Unma. However, unlike Benjamin, Sradnik seems to have none of her DNA whatsoever, although if not King Nasabi, then I don't know where Sradnik got his more refined features from. Maybe Togashi draws him that way on purpose? Hunter x Hunter in general, it's not the most consistent of manga when it comes to character designs, but in this case Togashi could be changing the design so that in some panels you get this quick flash of Netero, but in others he smooths Sradnik's features down to make them blend in with the Kakian aesthetic. At this stage, Sradnik is probably the most expected answer because he's being built up as our major antagonist Princeman, but he would also be the most narratively convenient answer because that would give Kurapika and Longi the exact same target rather than splitting their focus across different princes. If I had to place a bet right now, cold hard Australian cash monies, it would be on Sradnik. Everything falls into place quite neatly with him, and it makes him that much more terrifying to think that he's not just any nen genius, but that he has the blood of Isaac Netero and the sick guidance of Beyond Netero, leading him to a position of power and a reign of horror that the world itself would be lucky to endure. But this is Hunter x Hunter, and the most straightforward answer often is not the correct one. And so we move on to 5th Prince Tebeppa, who I feel is out of contention because Longi is her bodyguard, and she probably would have discovered if Tebeppa was Beyond's child by now, but also maybe not. Maybe Longi just sort of sucks. And thinking about it, if it was Tebeppa, that would create some wonderful dramatic tension. To learn that the prince you've pledged yourself to is also the person that you've pledged to kill. Heartbreaking. And I guess we really don't know much about Tebeppa's personality yet, but her nature of collaboration definitely goes against the Netero grain, as well as the nature of being overly cautious, which is how every character who knows Tebeppa seems to describe her. However, as we've seen, she is also incredibly ruthless, and that's definitely Netero-esque. And Tebeppa also looks very masculine compared to her mother, and you know what, even compared to her father. So I could see these chunky Netero characteristics coming through. And I can see a similar thing happening with 6th Prince Tyson, because she looks a fair bit like her mother, 4th Queen Katrono, with the key difference being the nose. Katrono has no nose, and splicing some Netero in there would certainly explain Tyson's mega nose. I mean, sometimes mega nose. Tyson is another one of those inconsistently drawn characters where sometimes she has this huge nose, and other times it's so teeny tiny that it may as well not exist. And I know that I made an argument for this being intentional with Sradnik. The idea that Togashi is trying to hide that resemblance until the revelation, just giving out hints here and there. But here's the counter argument to that. The art inconsistency could be because Togashi has no deeper plan for the heritage of the character, and Tyson is drawn radically differently every time she appears because, well, she's just not that important and we should probably be looking elsewhere. She's been one of the lesser focused on princes to this point, so the temptation is to ignore her, but she is also a religious cult leader, and Beyond Netero's character is based on a real-life religious cult leader, who we'll get into in another video. But Tyson doesn't quite blend with the Netero ideology because she preaches the message of love and peace. Although I should say that Isaac Netero was no stranger to this message, even going so far as to make an adorable love heart during his fight with Meruem. And of course, Tyson could be deceiving everyone in typical Netero fashion. And her guardian spirit beast is collecting energy from her followers for some greater purpose, and that purpose, it could be quite sinister. And I think that 7th Prince Luzurus has similar, if not even greater potential. One big point in favor of Luzurus is is that it would be phenomenal subversion. For Luzurus to have spent his entire life to this point making his siblings believe that he's lazy and has no ambition, however, underneath all of the everything, Luzurus turns out to be the most hardened and dedicated of all. That is what a Netero would do. When we first met Isaac Netero, he was playing the role of the dumb, perverted old man. And Beyond also puts on this act of being a hero, a herald of the new era. They're both very deceptive. As is Luzurus' guardian spirit beast, which has the ability to conjure traps based on whatever the target desires, and once trapped, the target is put under the beast's control. It shows people what they want to see, and it uses that desire to manipulate them for its own goals, just like every Netero we've ever met. And we should also float the potential idea that if Zhang Lei is the son of Oniel, then Luzurus could be the son of Brocco Lee, boss of the Chara family that's funded by Luzurus. And with that in mind, just look at this. The two of them have very similar hair, the thick puffy stuff, which isn't possessed by Nasabi, Dwazil, or even Beyond Netero. Actually, yeah, looking at them again, I feel pretty good about Luzurus probably being Brocco Lee's son. At the very least, I think that's a more likely answer than Beyond at this point. And you know what? I'm starting to think to myself, is anyone actually Nasabi's child? Because his wives seem to be doing anyone but him. We're gonna skip Saleh Saleh, also Momose and Kacho, because they're dead. I don't really want to focus on them too much. They're out of the intrigue and probably not Beyond's child. And so we're gonna go to 9th Prince Hulkenberg to consider, because he would be an awkward answer as many of the lower ranking princes are flocking to him as their hope for survival and actively pushing for him to become the king. I think the biggest point in Hulkenberg's favor is that he and Longi kind of look alike. They have these incredibly strong and straight noses with a very pronounced jaws. I could definitely see them being half siblings. Hulkenberg's above average aptitude for Nen also should not be forgotten, and his goals may very well align with Beyond's plan quite well, because Hulkenberg wants to get rid of the Kakian monarchy, and if Beyond wanted to control the nation somehow, then dismantling the established system of government could be a pretty solid place to start. And alongside Saradnik, Hulkenberg, he's also being set up as one of the meteor story princes, so I could definitely see it being him. I don't know if I could see it being him as much as Saradnik, but this is possible. But someone who I don't think I could see it being is 11th Prince Fugetsu, because that would also imply that the deceased 10th Prince Kacho was Beyond's child. He had a set of twins. It could be, and again, Kacho is dead. Now it's looking like Fugetsu is going to follow shortly. In fact, Fugetsu may already be suffering from one of Beyond's curses, so while it's not 100% not her, I do feel like she's one of, if not the most unlikely candidate. However, just as an addendum to that, if Fugetsu and Kacho were Beyond's children, then they would possess an incredibly convenient pair of Nen abilities for use to get him off the Black Whale 1 and around the Dark Continent. But here is the most Togashi possible answer to this question. Beyond's child is 13th Prince Mario, someone that no one could have predicted because he hasn't grown enough to show any visual resemblance to what we know, or have any distinguishable personality traits to give us any clue. And again, it could create some nice drama, because Longi would then need to go and murder a child being protected by Bisky and Hanzo, the latter of which is super determined not to let this one die after he failed to protect 12th Prince Momose. And there would also be something quite cute about Bisky forming a relationship with Mariam, because Bisky was trained at Isaac Netero's Shingen-ryu School of Kung Fu, so she could potentially end up training the latest generation of Netero and bringing this master-student dynamic full circle. But as for our final prince, you might think that Wobble is out of contention because Oitoshi would probably know if Beyond did some baby-making activities with her, but that doesn't account for a couple of things. Firstly, this is kind of dark, but it's Hunter x Hunter. She could have had a Nen ability used on her, been manipulated into activities and then had her memories erased. Or we could skip that entirely and it could even be some sort of Nen conception, Jesus style. But here's the true play, right? Wobble is not the daughter of Beyond, but Queen Oito is, meaning that Beyond didn't seduce any of the queens, but instead planted a queen who already had his blood to produce a grandchild, and Wobble is the great-grandchild of Isaac Netero. This does get a lot more convoluted though, because Oito came from a family of 5 siblings. They were impoverished, etc. But hey, maybe 5. It's what you gotta do if your plan requires a girl and you keep popping out boys. And if Beyond could have found a way to plant her into this family, then I can also see him steering Nasabi in her general direction. And after growing up in poverty, Oito would have very few qualms with hooking up with the king and becoming his 8th queen, which is very much what actually happened. And then what we have is maximum drama, because Kurapika has sworn to protect Beyond Netero's grandchild grandchild. Oh my god. And Longi has sworn to kill beyond Netero's grandchild. And that gives Kurapika yet another problem to add to the problem pile of everything trying to kill him. Or maybe, and just stick with me here, we can even go a layer deeper. What if King Nasabi himself is beyond Netero's son, and therefore every child of Nasabi contains the blood of Beyond Netero? Remembering that Beyond is at least 70 years old, he doesn't look it, but the dude has been around for quite some time and has been preparing for this mission to the Dark Continent for half a century now. I don't know anything anymore. But having said all of this, it's entirely possible that no prince is the child of Beyond. This could be a situation where we have intrigue built up for one of the classic Hunter x Hunter anticlimaxes, but I choose not to believe that at the moment. Right now, I'd prefer to be immersed into this world, and Longi is asking us to trust her. And we have every reason to do so, because her telling the truth is literally a condition of her Nen ability. If she thinks that one of the princes is the child of Beyond, then that's what I'm going with. And in my opinion, the most likely candidate is, and until further notice, will remain 4th Prince Radnik. However, there are so many amazing directions that this plot point could take us in, and that's before we even consider the possibility that we may not be restricted to just one child, and that there's no real reason why multiple princes couldn't be the spawn of the fiendish Beyond Netero.